Oops. Just admitting everybody. Welcome everybody. We're just letting everybody in the room. As we start, we'll give it a couple minutes to let people get in. Thank you all for coming. So everyone was automatically muted on entry, just so you know, but please, we're hoping that everyone will feel welcome to join and take part of the conversation. And you can either raise your hand or unmute yourself or chat if you have something that you'd like to say. In a moment, I'm gonna put some just general notes. See lots of friends and familiar names. Thank you all for coming. Just going to put a few notes in the chat here for everybody as sort of guidelines, general guidelines for the conversation. Tommy, we have 31 guests, some friends joining us. So I don't know if you want to start or give it another minute or so.
Let's give it another minute or so.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Chairman.
Hey, Kim.
Hi, Nick.
How are you?
Hey, Nick.
Thanks. Welcome, everybody. Good. How are you?
All right, let's kick it off. The next folks here will be from Reverend Bill Neely.
Thank you, Tommy. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to tonight's program on race and equity in Princeton, led by the Princeton Civil Rights Commission and co-hosted by the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Princeton. I'm Bill Neely, the parish minister of our congregation, and we're all really, really grateful for everyone for coming on tonight's call and being a part of this program. We at UU Princeton are actively trying to center anti-racism and anti-oppression in all of the ministries and programs of our congregation in new ways, responding to the urgent crisis of racism both locally and across the country. And part of that involves reaching out and connecting with community groups that are doing similar work. And that's why we're very excited to partner with the CRC tonight to have this community conversation on issues that concern us all. So thank you again for being in tonight's program. I'm pleased to pass the virtual Zoom mic to Tommy Parker, the chair of the CRC, so that he can introduce tonight's program.
Good evening, all. Thank you all for coming out. Welcome aboard, and thank you to the Unitarian Church and Reverend Neely for inviting us to participate in this dialogue. this came about as a part of a series of dialogues that CRC will be doing this summer about racism and equity in Princeton, and just generally the common consensus of the public of Princeton as to their concerns about the times we are in now and what we're doing today. Little bit about what the Civil Rights Commission does. We are an advisory body to the mayor and city council, but we also are formed and chartered to do community dialogues much like this. We receive complaints about civil rights violations and try to help resolve. We are seeking dialogue with members of the community about their racism and other forms of discrimination that they may have experienced in their own time or are concerned about in what they see in their day-to-day process. Just a little more about who CRC is and what we are charged to do by ordinance, and it will connect directly to this evening. Work cooperatively among people and groups to aid in the elimination of discrimination between people based on ascribed characteristics, including but not limited to race, creed, color, national origin, ancestry, age, marital status, civil union status, domestic partnership status, affectional or sexual orientation, genetic information, pregnancy, sex, gender, identity or expression, disability or typical hereditary cellular or blood trait of any individual, or because of the liability for services in the armed forces of the United States or the nationality of any individual. Develop community education programs that foster open and effective dialogue about race relations. C, recommend ways and means of initiating and improving municipal programs for coordination of community efforts to address problems involving tensions in the community. D, make recommendations to Princeton Mayor and Council for development of policies, procedures, and programs that will aid in the prevention and elimination of all types of discrimination in Princeton. And that's pretty much where we are here today, folks. This is not going to be a lecture type format. We really, CRC really is here to listen and hear from the public and Reverend Neely, your congregation, but the public in general, which has also been invited to this meeting this evening. So having said that, I am going to open the program with some questions for you, all right? As is indicated in the note that came down from Ms. Dorman, all right, you can participate in the conversation by unmuting yourself and opening your mic. You can send questions in through the chat room availability, or raise your hand and she will see you and let you in if need be. But having said that, I'm going to come with what might be a rhetorical question, but it's in direct response to the outreach from your congregation as to what brings you here today. Real simple. Anybody can open up and give some thought to that matter.
Feel free to unmute yourself. I am checking to see if anybody has raised their hand.
Can't see me, but this is Shirley Satterfield, and I'm here today to learn more about the Civil Rights Commission and to also know what the Civil Rights Commission does as far as housing and affordable housing and less racism in housing in Princeton.
All right. Again, like it's technology. I'm sorry, Ms. Shirley, could you repeat your question, please?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
I'm here to learn more about the Civil Rights Commission and what you do. I do know some of what you do, but I'm also here because I'm interested in the racism and the inequality of housing in Princeton. I can go on further, but I'm going to stop here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. As you know, living in Princeton all my life and knowing that this is a racist town, has been a racist town, I'm concerned about the gentrification of the people who have been here forever. And I'm concerned about people who buy houses in an area where they rent them out and don't live here, and they're using them as commodity, and what we can do about that. Now, I know we do have the Historic Preservation Commission, we have the council, but what does it stand on the Civil Rights Commission?
Stand on the Civil Rights Commission, Ms. Shirley, is to protect exactly those entities in terms of if folks feel as though they have been discriminated against from some service that is provided summarily to anyone in the community as it relates directly to housing. If there is some consideration or concern about housing or some try to procure housing, be it as a to buy housing, or even in some cases in which we actually have done seminars on, even those of us who are rental occupants of housing, to see that everyone is being treated fairly, has equal access to housing. And if that is a situation where any individual feels that there is some concern in that area or that they haven't treated, we are there and available to have a dialogue and can offer, as part of our action and what we do offer conflict resolution, all right, to matters. We will afford a space for this to happen. If in that process, it can be a three-step process. Conflict resolution in and of itself is much like a facilitated dialogue between the two parties, the complainant and the respondent, and both have to mutually agree to proceed in this matter. If there is no resolution to their concern, the complainant's concern in the conflict resolution, we will also provide a list of mediators at no expense to either party. All right, the mediators are an independent body of a list of mediators that will hear the matter. Then, and if it's not a resolution that is up to a resolution in that period of time that is resolved, and again mutually agreed upon, the complainant would be entitled to take their case to the Attorney General's Office, State Division of Civil Rights, and that's in any of the matters, housing or any of the matters that might have some indication of a concern for a civil rights violation.
Thank you.
We also, if Commissioner Mann is on the call, she might be able to also speak to some of the RISE student work that we're having done on this topic.
Sure, thank you, Kim. Hi, Stacy Mann here. Nice to see you all.
Hi, Stacey.
So in addition to handling individual issues of discrimination as they arise, the Civil Rights Commission is trying to kind of shed light on the history of affordable housing and not affordable housing in the town. So to sort of give some perspective on the struggles that working people have faced to find living affordable accommodation in this town over the long haul. And we have been partnering with so Princeton University launched at the beginning of the summer a really exciting initiative to pair students and to pay students to carry out research advancing racial justice work in partnership with various entities, both in Princeton and nationally. So one of the students with whom we are working is an architecture graduate student who's working on a what's called a story map. It's kind of a interesting platform for telling a story that is visual and geographic. And in this case, the student, whose name is Carrie Bly, who I think is not on this call, is creating a map of affordable housing in Princeton with all the various sites and some of the story that corresponds to each site and sort of how it came about and who lived there, who lives there. And the idea is to let it be known more widely that this is a struggle that Princeton has faced for a long time, the one that you highlight, Ms. Satterfield. And of course, you've done a lot of important work on this as well. And like everything that the Civil Rights Commission does, it's very much will benefit from input from members of the community. So if anybody's interested in participating in that or telling their story, or if you have photos of your affordable housing experience, we're really trying to build that out and make it available to people, but also to let people be a part of telling that story. And that will, some sort of beta version of that will be ready at the very end of August. So in a couple of weeks or so, and we'll be excited to get feedback on it.
Thank you for that, Stacy. In fact, I'm talking to Carrie. We're having a Zoom meeting on Tuesday. She's in Minneapolis right now. But
That's right.
I'm sending her a map and all the information, and I will be taking her on a visual tour on Wednesday.
And also,
oh, that's wonderful. That's great.
As part of that same research input, even considerations for what is already on the books, which I'm sure you're aware of, incidents of redlining, which have been clearly outlined and basically against the law in the past after that time was created. All right, but it's not to be unseen even now. So this study will look at all the possibilities of that.
And in addition to what Stacy just told us all about, what we're doing is sort of the long-term macro level. We're also doing something much more short-term and immediate. And this is something that Commissioner Fraga brought up recently. I mean, Councilwoman Fraga brought up, is there are a lot of screens that are used to screen people for affordable housing, some of which may be arbitrary, some of which may be even racially discriminatory. The specific one she raised was credit checks, and we're in the process of gathering and looking at all these screening devices for public housing and affordable housing to make sure there's nothing unfair or discriminatory in there. And if there is, we'll have to change it.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you, Ms. Shirley.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes, I'd like to say something. My name is Judy V, and I'm co-chair of the Rainbow Ministry at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Princeton. And the main project that we're embarking on right now is to somehow make a difference for trans women of color, who, as I'm sure most of you know, are probably one of the most highly marginalized groups of people in the world, particularly in this country. So I'm here to learn, first of all, if and how much of an issue that is in Princeton and where in the larger community that we might direct our efforts. We kind of even don't know how to approach it yet because it's a huge problem and involved with racism, involved with housing, involved with just every aspect that a marginalized group of people could encounter. So I guess what I'm doing is, what I'm asking is if anyone has information that could help us in this project. I'm available at lgbtq@uuprinceton.org. And if you see there's going to be a meeting or there's going to be an event or somehow have information that would help support this effort, I would highly appreciate it. Repeat again.
You can connect with
LGB
Rob Schreiber with the Byron Rustin Center for Justice.
I'm sorry, say that again, please.
Rob Schreiber.
Rob Schreiber.
Yeah. Byron Ruskin Center for Social Justice.
Yes, I'm in touch with Bayard Rustin Center.
Good. Okay.
And you might reach out also to our commissioner, Nick DiGiovanni.
Nick is
give
here.
the address again. Nick's here.
Could you put those names in the chat for me, please? Because it's hard for me to write them down so quickly.
Nick, would you like to address this a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Judy. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I serve as the LGBTQ liaison to the Civil Rights Commission. I'm fairly new, and I certainly want to try to build a network, as you're saying, because I think it's really important that we link up all of the leaders within Princeton's community. So I'll put my name and my email in the chat here, and I'll just keep you on a list. So I'm in the process of kind of forming a subcommittee where we can kind of discuss specific issues for LGBTQ people. And it kind of ranges right now. Like I just recently was reaching out to a lot of leaders who are more involved with LGBTQ youth, for example. And so I think that, transgender rights and issues are also something that is really important to focus on because they desperately need our help. And so I think it would be great to create some sort of network for that in Princeton, because I'm just one person, right? And I'm not transgender myself. And it would really help a lot to have more people in the community provide that input. So please, I'll provide you my email, and it'll be great to speak with you and just see what we can do to set something up in terms of for my subcommittee. Okay.
Thank you.
Reverend Carol Hogg would like to speak.
Sure.
Miss, do you know how to unmute yourself?
I did. Fern Spruill also has her hand up. I was really interested in what you were saying, Shirley, about properties being purchased and then rented, purchased by people who have no intention of living in them. And I wondered if some of those are in the Jackson neighborhood area. And is there any community control that is possible? I'm not sure we want to prevent people from renting property, but I just wondered if there's any governmental factor in here. I'd like to know more.
Yeah, most of them are in the Jackson community, and we have the Historic Preservation Commission that we meet for people who have to come before us, and also the Princeton Council. But I'm just concerned that people buy the houses, they don't live here, but they rent them out. And it's become a commodity, and it's overpowering our community.
Ms. Fern?
Okay, I just wanted you to know, I was first introduced about the LGBTQ through the YWCA about 4 or 5 years ago. And they keep a safe haven for our Princeton youth, that they can go somewhere and be able to talk and not feel targeted. So I didn't even know that exists until I was invited a few years back. So we should be reaching out to our CEO, Tay Walker, at the YWCA.
Thank you. All right, I have another question for you. What do you consider the most important problems of racism and other discrimination, other forms of discrimination here in Princeton?
Well, I don't know. This is Dunbar Burney. I'm a resident here in Princeton and a member of the UU Church. I really appreciated the police chief and mayor talk back that you had organized a couple weeks back, and I felt like that was a great step at encouraging dialogue with the community. And so I think that's something that I hope might continue in some ways. It seemed like there were so many people that wanted to speak, that the time got filled up and there wasn't a chance for everyone to speak. And so people's experiences, lived experiences here in town matter a lot. And so 3 cheers on what you're doing with that. And it seems like more should happen.
Well, thank you. Yes, and that's kind of why this is formatted as it is now, to give folks an opportunity to speak, more of an opportunity to speak and express their concerns and ask questions where they can. The short answer to the opening of your statement is that it will be a continued process. It's based on the information that we received, the questions that came in, and those that didn't get a chance to be addressed, some of which were directly asked of the mayor and the chief. And so the intent is absolutely to garner some response and to answer some of these questions and to have continued dialogues with the police and the council in Princeton.
Ali has another question.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to underscore Dunbar's comment and say that my concern here, and I'm a graduate student, I've only been here for 5 years, but it feels like in this moment right now across the country, questions of defunding the police and especially in Princeton, the interaction between police and community members, it seems like it is increasingly tense and fraught. And I'm kind of interested in what it would look like for us to actually start talking between town members and the police department, and how kind of making peace between the two groups would look like. And I'm kind of curious to know, you know, like what Dunbar mentioned, you know, when the police report was spoken about by the representative 2 weeks ago in the town council meeting, there was very little space for people to talk and respond to that report. And it feels like there is some hurt in town, and there's some obvious problems. And I kind of would love to see a process and an engagement, like honestly and lovingly, between the police department and the people in town to like move forward and to be, you know, the best Princeton that we could be. And yeah, so that's kind of my concern and my hope.
Well, that's part of the nature of this particular dialogue and the one previously. And to answer your question, that's what we're here to hear from the community, and that kind of concern and conversation is one that's needed and has been expressed from the community, and we can act as CRC can act as a catalyst to make that happen. And absolutely, I think everybody's intent is to how we get to the best resolution, the best answer, all right, and that we share the love, you know, because that's what this is about. This is about something that has been a glaring commentary for members of not only this community, but nationally, in some cases, for centuries, all right? And it's time that we talk, and there's time that we take action after we talk. It's real, open dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Fern?
Yes. Also, we have 46 heads here. One of our biggest hurdle is marketing. How do we get this out to the community? Because right now we're the choir that's up here. We need to be able to reach out to the community so that they know this is going on. The ones that are really hurting, the ones that really would like to be heard. And
absolutely, you're absolutely 100% correct. And to that point, even as suggested and carried out by Ms. Spruill, there is a survey that's going to be going out. So in some cases, it's already gone out. We're going to make sure that it's translated into Spanish as well, so folks can openly participate, because there can't be any action without hearing from the public and truly addressing those concerns. And the one way that we can kind of pinpoint what's more immediate is through an outreach to the community, in this case in the form of a survey, but even for that matter, drafts of dialogue and thing that we can release to the community to get their response for those who, for instance, who weren't able to participate in dialogues like this. But that's right on the money, Ms. Rule, and it is something that we as a body will take, but we're also dependent on the community to please reach out, come down to civil rights meetings. We meet the 4th Tuesday of every month, but continue to express and bring us information like that your immediate concerns. All right. Yeah, and again, like I said, along with what's happening nationally, all right, it was a wake-up call for a lot of folks, especially this last 6 months. It was a wake-up call, all right, and folks are reacting, and people are in the street and all that. But you have bodies of people, all right, and generations of families, generations of citizens here that have literally been dealing with these issues for 400 years, and now is the time. Folks are demanding and asking questions, and whatever way we can help to bring that communication and gather folks together and take action for these concerns is what we'll do.
Reverend Hogg has indicated that she wants to speak, but I would like to just quickly before that read a question from the chat from Larry Spruill. CRC, is it true that civil rights do not address issues with municipal, police, or school? So if someone does not feel as if they are being treated equally as others at the Human Services Department, can they go to civil rights? Or could they go to civil rights?
The short answer is yes, and we do address issues that deal with the school out there. In terms of issues that deal with the police, all right, folks are advised to go to the affirmative action officer in the municipality first in any event, and affirmative action officer has to then, much like is their mandate, report any requests that will come along.
Thank you.
My question gets back to the, maybe it was Ali who raised it, of better communication between the community and the police. And I've recently become connected with a wonderful group in Princeton called Black Mothers Rising. Nakisha Ammons, I think is her last name, has been. Amen. Okay. And they are doing wonderful work, and I wish more people knew about it and would participate with them. They're trying to make strong connections before there's a crisis so that people are engaged in real dialogue and get to know each other.
Thank you.
Can I go?
Fern?
Okay. Yes. Yes, we are supposed to be addressing all the issues that Larry brought up. But the reason why we're here right now is because we have no complaints. So we're trying to figure out how can we find out what people are going through. We don't have any complaints that comes in. So this is why we're here. So that we can find out if people really want to, do they trust us? Can we make them trust us? Or can we, make it feel like as though, yes, we have the service here to render to you guys, that we can make it happen. But yes, all those questions were absolutely correct, but we haven't had to handle any yet.
Well, one is housing, and I'm sure we'll handle that one. Thank you, Fern.
And where do they go to file those complaints?
You can go to the website. I'm happy to share the link in the chat. I'll do that in just a moment.
Okay, that's just the website. There's no local place someone could go and enter to file a complaint?
Yes, on the municipal site. I'm going to put the link to the form to register a complaint in our chat.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
Jim, may I say something?
Sure.
Sure.
Oh, okay. My apologies for coming in late on the call. I hate coming in late because I'm not sure what I missed and it's probably discussed already. But I know the issue comes up a lot about, Princeton having some sort of oversight board over the police like some towns have. And just to let everyone know, the closest thing we have to that is our council does have a public safety committee, which functions much just like an oversight board. So just want to let you know such a thing already exists. Unfortunately, I'm not a member of that committee. I believe Leticia Fraga is on that committee. Leticia is actually, in addition to being my colleague on council, she's also the commissioner of the Princeton Police. And I believe David Cohen is on that committee. The mayor, of course, Mayor Lempert is on that committee. Maybe one other council person, just to let everyone know.
All right. Got another question out here. And kind of what we're talking about now. What actions do you think the commission should take to address these problems? All right, and the theme is racism and equity in Princeton. So it kind of covers across the board.
Another question on that, and this kind of goes into what the question I was asked before by my good friend Larry Spruill regarding issues with the school board and the town. I was wondering, does the CRC make any recommendations to the school board? I see Beth is on here. Hey, Beth. Regarding curriculum, because in my humble opinion, my very humble opinion, and I know I could get a reputation of being very opinionated. One of the root problems for racism in our society is lack of knowledge of people of the true history of our country and why things are the way they are. And what I mean by that is, you know, I went through 12 years, ever since I came to this country, 12 years of, well, nearly 12 years of public schools in Trenton, in predominantly Black schools. And we never had a class once where we talked about why we were in the situation we're in. And I grew up in very humble circumstances. So never had a class once that talked about why we were in the position we're in. So one of the downsides of that is that human beings like to ask themselves questions and answer it themselves. And so a lot of my peers growing up in Trenton, right off Martin Luther King Boulevard there, assumed that that was normal for us. And that and somehow to do other things was what the other people were supposed to do. And then we're surprised with the high crime we see in Trenton. And I'm thinking if we had, and then I'm gonna bring it to Princeton in a little bit, but I'm thinking if we had enough of a curriculum here in Princeton, and I know we started experimenting with that one class, which I had the privilege of teaching one day once, the racial literacy class. If one of the issues is whether or not a class like that should be common for all the students and all the faculty, so they know about issues like redlining. And people stop saying things like, well, my granddaddy came from so-and-so, was able to do all this. How come your grandfather couldn't do it? And to have generational wealth to pass down. If we have classes where we teach our students the truth about all these things that we talk about, and thank you, Kim, and others at the library who produce, you know, that have these programs where we come in and we talk about these things. But if we had some sort of means to give all of our children in Princeton that sort of education, that education, then they will really start to understand the background and the reasons why we have a lot of the problems. And then we hope they'll use that information to take to the next level, finding solutions to them, rather than going, you know, getting this cherry apple pie version of American history, which benefited one group of people at the expense of the other.
Well, Dwayne, I answered that in two phases as you asked the question. All right, historically, one of the pillars and founding reasons for the civil rights nationally and the Civil Rights Act, in fact, is education. All right, so we even in this town have engaged with the school system over years, and we can make recommendations in the sense of how that engagement comes about. All right, everybody kind of gets confused and puts this myth out there as though we're going to try to dictate to them, you know, how to spend their budget or something like that. No, in our most recent dialogues, in fact, we have talked about things like the curriculum as it relates to folks, to the children's everyday experience. Anything from recommendations about educators, all right, the fact that Black History Month doesn't tell the tale of or excuse the school from broadening a curriculum that tells the tale of our everyday life within the American history. All right, there have been recommendations in these dialogues, and again, they just go in as recommendations. They're not. We don't have any power to judge or adjudicate, so to speak. But in terms of recommendations for such things that has existed and in your time in school in Trenton, all right, but it's available throughout the state. For instance, as the Amistad Commission that was formed exactly for that reason, and has been used not only here but all over the country. Not so much here as it should have been, considering how long it's actually been in place.
Right.
Relatively speaking, again, the relationship history here in town, we have had conversations, co-talks like these, and in fact been the sponsors and catalysts of training over the years. As any of us with a little age know, the headings go under different titles at time, anywhere from sensitivity training to now recommendations of training in unconscious bias and things of that nature. And systemic racism is always a question that comes up, and how that impacts the educational experience and opportunity for students in our school system. It's about the equity, right? And in fact, it participated in a study circle, creating a study circle a year or more ago, all right? Which the baseline was, in fact, the equity report done by her name slips
Dr.
DeBose.
I think so.
Yeah.
I was Dr. Someone. I just can't remember her name.
Right. And so yeah, the short answer is we can make recommendation and engage in dialogues.
And let me add something to that, Tommy.
Sorry, Dwayne. Can I just? We just have a couple of questions and comments in the chat that I want to bring up before they go so far up I can't see them anymore. Patricia Saul has a question asking for clarification about, I guess, the committee that you were talking about, Dwayne. She'd like to know if she says, what is that committee? It's not the same as the CCRB, is it? Do you want to speak to that while I try and scroll down to the next question?
Are you talking about when I mentioned the Committee on Council, the Public Safety Committee? If that's what Patty's asking about.
Patty, is that what you're asking about?
That is.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Patty. Well, the Public Safety Committee is a committee that pretty much oversees all the public safety in our town. But part of their duties is to deal with issues that arrive with Chief Sutter and his force. So they function much like a oversight board. Other towns have an official oversight board for police. Some towns, I should say, have that. And they tend to be controversial in different towns. Like usually get pushback from the local police forces. And that's a whole other issue, dealing with police forces and dealing with police unions, that's a whole other issue when we talk about equity and making our country better. And you've seen recently where I believe the local state PBA, et cetera, endorsed a certain person for president, which tells you something, which is very unfortunate actually, as we try to make policing better. But anyway, but to answer the question, yes, our Public Safety Committee kind of takes on a lot of those functions. If issues arise, if citizens have issues, they discuss that. So they very much function like an oversight board. I mean, it's one of their many functions, oversight board for the Princeton Police. I bring that up only to say that there seems to be a notion in town that the Princeton Police Department has almost no oversight except for counsel, which with our many duties means that we don't have a whole lot of time to deal directly with immediate issues with the police. But the reality is we do have a committee on point.
Thank you, Dwayne. I have a comment from Judy V. She notes that Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz has written a book called An Indigenous People's History of the United States, which gives a wonderful perspective of our history. And I thank you, Judy. And Eileen Bird says, it would be helpful to have another meeting with the police chief or the pending one. I'd like to know how much transparency there is in the records of the police in Princeton and in hiring new police. There are lots more questions and information to be shared, such as what defunding the police really means. And then finally, Linda notes that Marceline DuBose was the consultant, and Bruna Kleinman asks, does the Civil Rights Commission have any efforts to defund the Princeton police? So I think those two, Eileen's and Bruna Kleinman's question, go together. Tommy, do you want to speak to that?
Okay. Well, let's back up to the defund the police. Do we have any efforts, for instance, to defund the police? That's not essentially how we work. Our catalyst again for the dialogue as to what folks are meaning about defunding the police, kind of breaking that out. Where does it go? I know as the subject came up initially, I guess back in after the George Floyd murder, it went from disbanding police to this defunding police, and then various breakdowns of what is meant by defunding police. Some were of the ilk of directing funds that would normally go into the budget for police into other support agencies and social service agencies in the municipality, not just Princeton, but kind of that had been part of the national dialogue. And essentially, again, that's where we come in as a catalyst to have these dialogues, and the better answer would be from the police department themselves as to how that part of the budget is used, what that funding means, what would be implied by that. Joining on council, you might have some insight into that process as it relates directly to what the funding procedure is for the police department.
Yeah, I mean, I want to address that, and there's a couple other things that came up, and I was trying to write some notes down so I don't forget about anything important. Of course, the budget is public, so anyone can go to the municipal website to see how our budget is broken down. However, there's some really good questions came up from some folks recently. Maria Huega asked a really good question about, she said in the budget, we don't break down the pension part for the police. So right now, the Princeton Police has a budget of just under $8 million for daily operations. There's an additional budget of about $800,000 for the outsourced police communication. And then there's the, dispatch. Then there, of course, is the part that Maria and some others have brought up, which is a good point about issues such as pension, et cetera. I'm certainly no expert on the pension funding part. So when it comes to funding, everything is right there. Of course, a lot of the funding decisions first come from the department itself. The department tells what it needs. Mayor and council review our entire municipal budget, which right now is about $64.2 million, and then we make decisions based on what's needed. And of course, I can say this for myself. I can say it for mayor and my council colleagues, and we really do have a wonderful mayor and council. Just to let you know, I've looked at different towns, but our mayor and council really do look through the lens of equity and consider a lot of these competing issues when we make our decisions, right? And let me let you know that's not the same in a lot of other places. But that said, there's still, I'm always, me personally, I'm always open to new suggestions and ideas and better ways to allocate the budget. I'll also add on the whole issue of defunding the police. I've made some comments on council. I know some of them got some folks upset. Maybe I got a little too heated about it. But there are a few things there. Number one, the concept of defund the police. I'm wondering, did anyone do any kind of real analysis, right? Real scientific inquiry, weigh different options, and then come to the determination that police forces should be defunded? That can happen. I know there's a history going back to the 1960s of this catchphrase, defund the police. I'm very aware of the history of policing in America and around the world, and how some of our policing came from slave patrols, et cetera. Well, it depends on where you lived and what type of community it was. Very aware. But if anyone, I think, did any real scientific analysis, considered facts, they would not come to the conclusion that we just get rid of our 50-something person sworn officer police force, because of the work they do, because they are also the ones making sure that people aren't driving home intoxicated and hurting pedestrians and bicyclists and other drivers on the streets. Yes, there are legitimate questions such as, should police always be the first responder? Those are when I say, I don't like to say any question is illegitimate, but the reality is we have to be reasonable about these things. And I think those who say, let's just defund the police outright, what they do is they alienate a lot of people who otherwise would reasonably consider ways to make policing better. That's why I prefer to use the term re-envision the police.
Thank you, Dwayne, for sharing that. I wanted to point out that Mayor Lempert has put in questions that they're being asked that have been frequently asked about the Princeton Police, a link to the FAQs on Princeton Police in the chat. And there was something else that I wanted to say, but now I've forgotten it. I'm sorry. Oh, I did. Miss Bird asked if we could have another just group dialogue with the police chief, and we do hope to be able to make that happen with the new chief if possible. Thank you.
Karen, from not monopolizing, can I say one more important thing? I'll be quick, I promise. I promise. One issue with policing here in Princeton and in general, which I think is extremely important, is the issue of internal affairs. I know this is a hot button issue. I know it's a third rail issue, but I've seen this in my law practice. I've seen this in general, that the fact that internal affairs investigations are kept secret, I think there's a fundamental problem with that. And that's not just here in Princeton. I think this is I think we're preempted by state law. The reason why I say I think I'm not positive, and I don't want to represent something I'm not sure about from the legal standpoint. I don't think it's something that we can go do openly. But I really think the dialogue needs to start at the state level and all the way down to the county and municipal level here in town about what we do about internal affairs investigations with the police.
Thank you. And we definitely want this to be a listening session. So does anyone else have anything that they'd like to contribute? Or Tommy, do you have another prompting question? I'm trying to look through to see if your hand is raised. Reverend Hogg.
I would like to go back to some of Dwayne's comments about the need for real education about our history. And I noticed that Beth Barron is on the call, who's currently president of our school board. I wondered if Beth would have any comments.
Beth, you can unmute yourself if you want.
I can unmute myself. Yes, I would love to comment. I actually was writing a really long comment in the chat. for bringing up the subject of how we teach in the schools. The board is very concerned with expanding our racial literacy curriculum. And I just wanted to report that we already earlier this year, before the Black Lives Movement, before everything kind of got all, you know, a lot of attention to this issue, we'd already approved for funding for the summer. We developed an online racial literacy course that's designed to kind of expand the course that's taught in person at the high school, with the idea of eventually hopefully making it available more broadly and possibly using it as one way to make it mandatory for all the kids at PHS. And my understanding is that that course will be piloted this year and required in the spring for student leaders in sports and clubs and coaches and advisors, which is a start. And also our superintendent, interim superintendent, recently announced that he's going to have racial literacy work put into the curriculum of the K-1 this year in fall, and he will have it, he's committed to putting it into K through 5 by next fall. And I know there's a lot of work going on to try to expand it for the middle school and figure out in the high school how we can make it more broadly available to all students. And I know the board would like to take the online course, and I also hope eventually we can offer it for the community. So we really do, we're really trying to make this move as quickly as we can, and are very supportive of this. And also I would say, if you want to look at a really interesting set of summer reading lists for the children, our librarians last spring put together some really good books for this summer for the children to read as they prepare for this year in the fall, that are quite much more reflective of the diversity of our students than they have been in the past. So thank you for asking about it at the schools, and we're doing our best to try to move this forward.
Beth, in terms of the racial literacy programming, I know there was some dialogue as to what grade level to start in. I think there was some talk about starting racial literacy as early as 2nd or 3rd grade.
No, actually kindergarten. I think I think Dr. Glossa was really, interested in getting it started as early as possible. So, I mean, I don't know that the pre-K has it. I'm not sure. I can't remember exactly whether he said it was pre-K to 1 or K to 1 this year, but it's going to be, he's asked Dr. Joy to put together, I think, some principles that need to be integrated into the curriculum this year in the K to 1s to start them off young.
I have some notes in the chat first. Eileen Bird comments that teachers need to be racially literate as well, and maybe the course could be required for them. Beth, I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the idea is we understand it needs to be through the whole school. It's all of us. It's the board, it's the teachers, it's the students. So I think that's part of the plan.
And then Ali has a question. I'd like to speak to Fern's earlier concern, which is that CRC is not getting complaints. If that is the function of the CRC, then we are failing. How do we build a culture in Princeton where people in the town who are facing problems feel comfortable coming to the CRC and other resources in town for help to redress wrongs?
The question?
You want me to repeat the question? Okay. I'd like to speak to Fern's, Ali asks, I'd like to speak to Fern's early, Ali, do you want to just say it?
Sure. I mean, I feel a little bit bad because I know Patty wanted to speak on the kind of teacher and education initiative, but yeah, I like to speak to Fern's earlier concern, which is that the CRC isn't getting complaints. And if that's the function of the CRC, then I feel like we're failing. How do we build a culture in Princeton where people in the town who are facing problems feel comfortable coming to the CRC and other resources in town for help and to redress wrongs? I think that the culture is the big part for me. I was like Beth, I was kind of going through writing this thing in the chat, and it's not just structures, it's like culture. How do we actually build a culture in Princeton where people feel comfortable, like the kids, at Community Park North playing today, feel comfortable coming to us and registering those complaints? Yeah.
Well, one thing is that we keep trying just through outreach and things like this. Get the word out that we are there, and part of that comment, as I recall, the word trust came up. There has to be a trust that comes forward from someone who might have a complaint, all right, to kind of reach out to us, take advantage of the fact that we're here. And quite honestly, we're trying to do a better job of making sure that we communicate to the community and the public all right, that we are here, all right, and please come and express your concerns and considerations. There's, there are all kinds of folk tales and stories that go around about the relationship of civil rights and its connection to the municipality or whatever. And really, that's a small concern in what can actually be about. But it has to first start with, you have to come and put the complaint in, because I know from this group that's here and even historically, all right, these folks are absolutely 100% focused on trying to resolve issues, especially as they relate to matters of discrimination and in any form, all right? Racism, all right, which is the premier of this dialogue today, but there's not a lot of actions that we can take at an individual level unless the individual actually comes forward, right? In terms of these kind of outreaches built right into our structure and our charter, in fact, is community information, community dialogues to kind of get a pulse of what's going on. And again, in that advisory capacity, if there are things that are weighing a certain way, all right, that our municipality can do better, all right, that's what the advisory capacity of our charter is as it relates to civil rights. But please, folks, come out, find out on your own for yourself. Come and ask questions, and believe me, you will get the attention, and it will be direct. If it's something that's outside of our venue, then you will get direction as such. So
I know that Fern and Lou both would like to speak. Fern, would you like to go ahead?
Sure. Well, first off, they can't come out to us. And we're already doing a lot in the community by distributing food, any supplies. The same way we're doing that, we ought to be able to be getting out any of the Civil Rights Commission information. You don't know where to go if there's nowhere to go. But if we start sticking it in their food bags and things like that, then we've opened up a big door. And then from there, we'll tell them how to go to the website, because we're all there. We know this. But the at-large community that needs the help does not know. So how do we tell them? We send it in there in anything that we're given. I don't care if it's furniture. I don't care if it's clothes. We'll tack it to it and say, here, and then tell us how you feel.
Lou?
Ali, the fundamental problem, I think, just from my own experience, it's not as bad as culture. It's a little simpler. It's communication. The CRC is relatively new. And if you ask yourself, if you're a citizen of Princeton, how do you know we exist? The answer is there probably isn't much of a way for you to know they exist. And mostly that means that we on the CRC have got to do a better job of letting the community know that we're here and we want to help. But you can help us. People like you can tell your friends, your associates, organizations that you're involved in about the CRC, because now you know. And it's our responsibility, but you can help us spread the word that we're here.
Is it okay if I just say one quick thing, which is that Fern just presented a really kind of concrete thing that we can do. Princeton Mutual Aid, this organization, is out here giving people groceries and rent utility help and genuinely like giving help to people. If we could actually attach some, the CRC, information to that, that could actually genuinely help people to encourage them to learn about the resources available. Because I just want I want this to be useful and to work, and for us to actually, and I think Fern has such a concrete and kind of beautiful idea that it would be interesting to think along those lines.
Lee, if you could distribute that note in your organization, in the municipal aid, we'll get you, if you'll distribute it, we'll write it and get it to you. Count on it.
Thank you. I have some questions in the chat that I'd like to get to. I know that Patricia Saul has been hoping to speak for some time.
Thanks, Kim. So I just wanted to say that I was happy to hear Beth say that you were, I'm not sure exactly what you said, but you were considering racial literacy or racial awareness or racial training for the teachers and the administrators as well. I don't think personally it should be the same courses the kids get. And I do think it is really important. I mean, I will say that the principal's letter after that racist video went out was tone deaf. And I don't know her, but I pretty assume that she meant well. But saying that parents should tell their kids not to watch out for what they put on social media was not the right message. I don't think that's what she meant to say, but that's what she said. And I think that racial training is so important that it needs to be done. And it's not just a course in history, though, although Dwayne is right, you know, we don't learn what really happened, but we also have to really prioritize this. Thank you.
I'd like to thank you, Patty. I'm just concerned. I'm watching the chat. Fern has noted that you know, we want to get the word out by any means necessary, and says that our schools can help, human services, churches, anyone. And yes, certainly, thank you. Maria Huega says it's not a question of defunding police as much as a question of social justice, whether Princeton is investing enough in providing the kind of services that would significantly improve the quality of life for our community, and especially those most vulnerable among us. The police is well funded, but I don't think we can say the same of other services. It is very likely that increasing our investment in human services, health, and recreation, we could also reduce our cost of policing. Hopefully, we can come together as a community and start a conversation about what are the trade-offs and what is our future vision for a more fair and sustainable Princeton. Linda Oppenheim notes, professional development has been developed to provide racial literacy training, implicit bias, etc. Some teachers did not attend and were able to fulfill professional development requirements in other ways. There is nothing in the evaluation process to enforce this requirement. Beth, I don't know if you want to speak to the professional development aspect, or if anyone can speak. You know, I think that the defund, it's clear that a lot of people would like to further talk about defunding the police, and that's a you know, conversation that we hope to continue having and get more information on.
Beth, are you trying to come on?
Yeah, I'll just say that I can't speak. I'm not speaking for the board, as I'm speaking as myself, having participated in hearing about the professional development. We've had a lot of different types of professional development and cultural responsiveness and implicit bias and microaggressions. And we've heard all about it, but it is something that we need to make sure that we can see and ensure that all of our staff get the training. And I can't speak to exactly how that's going to happen, but there's a definite awareness and interest of that issue.
Thank you. Roberto also has had his hand up for a while. Roberto, would you like to speak? You can unmute yourself, or I can unmute you. Here, wait, I'm unmuting. I didn't ask to unmute. Did you get it? You can just press unmute.
Okay. Thank you all. Thank you all for being here. Tommy, Fern, everybody. So I just came from a white male, white supremacy male caucus, 160 men across the country. So I'm a little jazzed up right now, so please excuse me if I say anything that offends. You know, Tommy, you said, you know how much I love you. You said the word trust before. Big, big word for me. There is no trust. Why would there be? There can't be any trust, I believe, from my own recovery experience, from my, you know, not having lived an always trustworthy life. There can only be trust, in my experience, if we come back to the truth and conciliation processes, where we acknowledge the sins and the lies that started this country and started our community here in Princeton. All the ideas we're talking about are great ideas, racial literacy courses, I've been on all these committees, the schools, they're all wonderful ideas, but we're not building trust that way. We're not getting to the heart of what the issue is. And the heart of the issue is the lies that founded this country, the white supremacy value system that started this country and started this community in Princeton. And we're not, the powers that be have never acknowledged it and never come out with a statement of amends to the people who have been so hurt by it since the beginning. Until that happens, why would there be any trust? And we're just going to keep going around in circles and circles and circles, coming up with lots of good ideas. As we do, we come up with great ideas, great organizations, Ballot. And, so that's what I got to say. And I keep repeating it as long as I have a breath, because until the government in this country, in this community, and the university, which is, they're in, the same piece, come together and are willing to do this, I just don't see us making any progress here. We'll continue to have a lot of good programs there. They will help somewhat, but we're not getting to the root cause. Thank you.
It's a really powerful sharing. Thank you, Roberto. Yael Neve has a question. She said, they said the conversation between the mayor and the police chief sounded as if there is no problem with policing in town. The police are very race sensitive, etc. Is that true? As a white person, I am not the target of over surveillance and would not know. Can people of color say whether what we see all around the country and even around the town also happens in Princeton? It is easy to believe that we are better, but is probably over-optimistic and wrong.
Anyone?
Yeah, I see some people nodding.
If I can speak, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just saying I saw some people nodding their head to no. Really, my question is, I know from friends who are people of color that outside Princeton, like, driving on Route 1, it's just like anywhere else in terms of over surveillance and being stopped for driving while black, etc. And I don't know what inside Princeton is like. And from that conversation that I heard with the chief of police, it sounded all rosy, but hard to know. I can't know being white.
Kim Fern has her hand up, but I can make a comment after, if that's okay.
I just want to say, I was the one shaking my head no, because I know the environment that I live in Princeton, and I have a 20-year-old grandson, that as long as he's in Princeton, I'm fine. Once he has to leave Princeton and go other places, it scares me to death, so, and I've never had anybody give any complaints of any brutalities as I have heard in Trenton, where I've heard a female say that she was pulled out of her car and thrown up against the wall, and this was in the 90s, and I'm like, wait, are you serious? So we don't see that here, not in that fashion. The only thing that I can tell you I saw that was really crazy was my oldest, that is 46 years old, that she was giving her sweet 16 on campus, and somehow somebody said there was a zip gun there. And the police came and they had black boys spread eagle on the ground. And I'm saying, you got the wrong boys. These boys are from Hun School. The boys you're supposed to be getting are getting away, but that's the most I've seen. And that's the most I've ever had people express to me. And unless they want to come forward and tell something different.
I just also want to just emphasize that part of the reason we're trying to have these community conversations is so that we can meet with as many community groups. So if you belong to a group or a church, please don't hesitate to reach out to us because we, if you'd like to have a similar conversation or feel that your group or conversation could bring more to this, because we'd really like to hear from you in this time of staying inside, or at any time we're doing, trying to figure out ways that we can get the word out. And really grateful to PMA for the offer. Dwayne, sorry.
Regarding I would say policing, over policing in certain communities in Princeton. Just at our most previous council meeting, we got a report from the Princeton. We basically got the annual report from the Princeton police, and a section of that report talks about the number of arrests, etc. And then it did a great thing where it broke down these numbers by race, etc. So it really put out there the fact that certain communities experience a much higher number of arrests than other communities, and for particularly in the African American community, where we see, if I remember the numbers correctly, right now Princeton, I believe, is about 6% African American, and I believe about 20-something% of the marijuana arrests were African American. And so one of the questions I posed, and it's kind of goes to what the whole general question is here, is what is the impetus for these arrests? I was wondering, is it people seeing people smoke marijuana? Are there police initiated investigations that lead to it? And the answer was these are car stops, which are done by, there has to be some sort of legal precedent to even stop the vehicles. To me, this is a long-winded preface to the other thing I want to say. One of the things that gets lost in a lot of the debate that's going on right now between Black Lives Matter and police unions, etc., is that when we talk about issues like over policing, there are a lot of truths that come up that we really have to tackle if there's going to be a truthful dialogue that comes to a positive result. What I mean by that is that one of the true things we have to tackle is that if you're in a community where you're more impoverished and you feel there's less hope, you are probably going to be in a place where you may be quicker to commit certain offenses than if you were in an environment where you felt like you had all the resources you needed, right? And considering our history, there's certain people that likely are going to be in one sort of community than the other, right? So if we talk about policing and arrests, you may see more arrests for certain type of offenses in certain communities than others. But another side of this dialogue is how our laws are written and how do we determine who to police. For example, I saw a study many years ago which said that as many white people take illegal drugs as Black people, and as many white people sell illegal drugs as Black people. So why is it the majority of people in New Jersey prisons for illegal drugs Black and Hispanic? And one of the things that comes up is that in so-called high crime communities, police are empowered to do things where they have reasonable suspicion, is what the legal term that's used. So a cop can walk up to someone and talk to them about, what are you doing? Where are you going right now? And if the cop feels it's articulable, the cop can check this person for weapons to make sure that during this very short stop, the person may not use that weapon against them. But if the cop happens to find some illegal drugs during this stop, then that contraband can be brought into, the cop can arrest the person for it. However, if some kid is at Hun or some other school with marijuana in their book bag, our law says the cop just can't go up and say, hey, let me look in your book bag for some marijuana. So those are the type of laws that are embedded into our system that allows the police to do certain things and arrest certain people, but not do it to other people. So, and I could go on forever, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I want to get to some of the comments in the chat.
Sorry.
I don't know if somebody was just trying to speak and I didn't hear them. Fern noted that Shirley would like the history of the schools to be known. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to scroll back up in the chat. Bruna Kleinman said there have been multiple instances at Princeton High School where the police have been called on Black students. Stacy Mann notes that there is statistical evidence that profiling happens here. I know that we've had a number of questions about police. I see that Mayor Lempert is here. I don't know, Mayor, if you'd like to say anything or if you just came to listen.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for this conversation. I want to thank Civil Rights Commission and also the UU for hosting this. I did mostly come to listen, but I guess I'll say a couple things. One is I shared the FAQ earlier in the chat, so I hope people can take a look at that. And that's a living, breathing document. So when we have conversations with this, we're trying to update it with questions that come up so we can make sure that we're, we're engaging conversation even with people who weren't able to be on the call tonight. I guess a couple things that I think are important is the police department that we have now was formed when we consolidated. So, and there have been a lot of reforms that have been made since 2013 when we consolidated that I think have been truly significant, and a lot of it comes from the culture. For those of you who are around during the consolidation debate, there was a lot of questions about, what culture would prevail in the new department, and especially under the leadership of Chief Sutter. We've tried to be on the forefront of transparency, putting information out there and really engaging with the public. That said, I think it's not something that you do and you're done with, and it needs to be continual. I think a lot of the questions that are being asked right now are really significant and important. One thing that I think that we've been doing in terms of, up to this moment, I think how we've been thinking about it is more around individual officer accountability. And so we have a lot of systems in place, and a lot of those are detailed in the FAQ you can take a look at. Looking at, is an individual officer acting appropriately? We've done a study with Rutgers to look at, is there bias in our policing? One of the tools they have to look at that is they look at who's pulled over, the racial makeup of who's pulled over at night versus during the day. So when you can see people versus when you can't see people, do those numbers match up or not? And so we have a lot of these systems in place, but I think what we hadn't been looking at, and something that personally, I think I've just, I think we're all sort of learning and growing. And I think one of the things that I personally recognize is that there can be sort of systematic things built within your laws, where even if you're enforcing the laws and you look at individual officers and they seem to all be doing everything okay, there still might be a problem. And I think that's what it's important to focus on that as well. It's not like we're not still looking at the individual officers. I think one of the things we're seeing when you look at the data is that there could be multiple reasons why you see racial disparities there. And I think if you're assuming that it's officer misconduct in some way, and then you look at the officers and you can't find misconduct, then I think there's just this frustration with the community seeing something, and we say, well, we're looking at it, we don't see it, and there's a problem. So I do think we need to look at the laws and how things are set up. And there've been some reforms. We're lucky to live in a blue state. There've been some reforms on the state level that I think are going to start to trickle down and are going to make a difference. And one of the big ones that has occurred already is around warrant arrests. So if anybody ever reads Town Topics, the police blotter, you'll often see someone was arrested because they had warrants out for, $100 or $75, or it's low amounts of money and people getting arrested. And that, not because, we're looking at who's getting pulled over and, night versus day and all of that. But it's more systemic, that the problem there. That's been reformed. So you have to, the bench warrants only kick in for over $500, which should be helpful. The other thing is in November, there's a ballot measure for marijuana legalization. And I think that's going to have an impact too, because there's certain things where the police officers lack discretion. And that often, if you look at the arrests, they're a series of things where the officers don't really have discretion. And so, you know, again, I think it can lead to this problem where the data says there's a problem, and I think we need to recognize that there's a problem with the data, but it might not be individual officers. It might be systemic problems, and we need to sort of figure out what's causing those disparities, and then where we can make those changes that are going to make a difference.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to share some things from the chat. Bruna Kleinman suggests, and I just lost it, to put up posters in the schools so people are aware of the Civil Rights Commission. Yaina Moore says, a Black professor was handcuffed to a table, a permissible restraint, but for speeding, outstanding ticket, and a suspended license. Would this policy have been applied to a middle-aged white woman as it was applied to a Black woman? Lewis Maltby, Commissioner Maltby would like to know if Mayor Lempert can share or cite the Rutgers study. Maria Huega, CRC might want to look into gender, ethnic diversity in the higher police ranks. No figures have been provided, but I suspect that diversity is very low currently. And Ms. Niv has said, Yaina, thank you for sharing that story. That is appalling. How is the woman a threat of attack or escape that warranted being handcuffed to a table? I can only imagine how traumatizing and scary it is for a woman to be handcuffed like that, especially by male officers. I assume that was the case. And Commissioner DiDomizio notes that the FAQ does provide figures on the diversity of the PPD. That's it from the chat.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything more you would like to tell or ask about or speak from your experience? We spent a lot of time talking about the police. The general dialogue is also about the impact of racism. I mean, in the last 6 months, what has been very, very graphically brought to light is the treatment of African-American citizens and the murders of not only George Floyd, but a number of others, and the reaction of indignation that came from the community. What are your thoughts about that? What woke up in you, for those out here, when you're seeing this happen? Like I said, even the idea of all this conversation all ties directly into the African experience here in America, right? Education, policing, the direct reference that Dwayne made to slave patrols in communities that didn't have police departments. So there is absolutely a direct correlation to how our system was built and the impact that it has on all of us. Any thoughts out there? Anybody have any concern in that regard? Any experiences with Princeton police that you like to bring to light?
Patricia Saul said, I just looked at the link Nick sent. It doesn't break down by rank. And Yaina Moore says, so many issues are tied to economic opportunities, the lack thereof, and the depleting supply of truly affordable housing in the community.
That is well noted. It is absolutely true. The economic impact was again grossly highlighted in this last 6 months. All right, I would also have to throw in there the consideration for health care and equitable access to services that would provide health, which COVID-19 very clearly brought to light. These are issues that are ongoing, and now it's time to hear and take action of some sort. These are very obvious things. Stacy, you had a reminder. Would you like to speak to the reminder for folks, please?
Sure. This is a survey that Sherrod Smith, who's on the call and a student at the School of Policy and International Affairs at Princeton and at UPenn Law, who's been working with the commission, and also Jackie Campbell, who is another Princeton graduate student, have put together to field ideas, complaints, suggestions, and generally just to connect us. So if you can spare 3 minutes to click the link and put in your information, if you have a specific point or issue you'd like to work on, or suggestion of a program or a project that you've read about elsewhere that you think is exciting and would be interested in working on, or an issue in town that you think it needs urgent attention, we will carefully review all the responses and sort of keep you in the loop that way, or get connected to you and be grateful for that connection, and possibly loop you in. The Civil Rights Commission has ad hoc committees, so if you're interested in working on a particular issue, maybe we can work with you that way, and you could indicate that interest through the survey. So it's just a reminder for that, and also to please send it around to people who you think
I want to note that Fern mentioned that earlier, Stacey, and she's actually the author of this initiative to create the survey.
Thank you. Yeah, so sorry, Commissioner Fern Spruill in conjunction with Sherrod Smith and Jackie Campbell. So the three of them really. Anyway, but it's great. I mean, that we are a small group of people, and we are, as you've heard, we need to do a lot more work to make ourselves known and to gain trust in the community. And by your presence here tonight, you seem to be signaling that you share some of our concerns, and so we're eager to work with you. And by emailing any of us or filling out this survey would be a great way to carry forward the conversation that has been begun tonight. And Yana Moore has her hand up.
Thank you. Tommy asked earlier, had any of us experienced anything negative, I guess, from Princeton police. I can tell you on 2 specific instances when I had my twin nephews were registered under my class for attendance at reunions, and a white woman officer from the Princeton police came up behind one of them, pushed them in the back, and then asked him what was he doing there. Of course, he had his badge. I even wrote on the badge, nephew of, and my name. And, because no white child of any white classmate or alum would have had to have had supplemental identifiers, but apparently that didn't count either. And it was a very negative experience for them, where they were justly attending, as they were registrants, fully named ID, and all the things that you have to do in order to attend. Then personally, I had called the police with regard to an unidentified, unaccompanied package, which was really a backpack that was sitting on the stoop of a house that was not occupied at the time. And I met the officer out there just so that I could, follow up, because they wanted to have plenty of information about me since I placed the call. But this particular officer, you would have thought that I was the criminal. He was nasty, derogatory in the way he was approaching the situation, either as though it was a waste of his time, or that, you know, maybe I had something to do with it, or, you know, it was something that just, that he sort of reversed and placed the burden on me to defend why I called him. And it was really a shocking experience, because it was clear this officer was about 4 years after consolidation, had not worked in the borough, certainly, to know that I was mayor of the borough. And I didn't, you know, walk around talking about that, and I didn't identify myself as that. But that has nothing to do with how you're supposed to treat individuals and people who are trying to assist in the law, in the enforcement of the law and safety for the general public. It was really, really disgusting. On to just the issue that I had written in the chat. There is a meeting tomorrow of the council in which a discussion around the accessory dwelling unit ordinance, which would allow for developers primarily to create condominiums through the accessory dwelling unit ordinance, which, when it was initially conceived over 15 years ago by the planning board, was intended to help senior, fixed income, lower income homeowners in maintaining their properties by allowing them to create a small unit within the house or outside of the house. If people think they're progressive by changing that into a developer-based profit motive policy, then we don't need that kind of progressive, because that's all it's about. And it has the potential of destroying the one affordable neighborhood, Witherspoon Jackson neighborhood, where developers are anxious to buy low so they can sell high. And it will be it would be like vultures all over again, swarming on the neighborhood to make a profit. And the CRC needs to come to the meeting I'm asking to make their interests known in trying to support and defend a community, and there are many, it's a diverse community of residents who are literally on the firing line by this policy that's getting twisted, as they say. So I'm hoping that the CRC sees, you know, an importance in their role to do just that. There won't be any people of any diversity or of color in town to even have this conversation if we can't live here. Thank you.
And I'm so sorry all that happened to you. I would just like to note that Liz Lempert said that she'd like to, in the chat, that she'd like to follow up with you to file a complaint about your treatment. I also wanted to note that we do have our regular meeting on the 4th Tuesday of the month too, if people would like to come to that. That's this Tuesday. Tommy, did you want to say anything else?
Yeah, is Miss Mann still with us?
No.
Okay. Basically, going back just to the development and to the outreach of various ad hoc committees that have come together on various projects of concern from the municipality as well as from the community, and I'm opening that invitation. Please, folks, come out, get involved, guide us, help us, present your concerns and interest in what it is we can do. We have been in collaboration over the years with a number of the community organizations in town on issues that are like to our charter, issues of discrimination and racial justice and diversity. Our longstanding partner is Not in Our Town. For instance, another issue that is on the table, we are going to be discussing and working at CRC in conjunction with our community partners, such as impact statement that kind of ties the municipality's concern and clear outreach for what it is that we represent here in this community. And as a note, I actually sent this to Lou, so it didn't show up in the chat room. Joanne has already asked to volunteer in this process, and we really are. We want to hear from many voices. This is not a resolution that's going to be coming from just CRC or just the mayor and council. They really do want to hear from the community. That's how Princeton best represents itself in this area. Other than that, I have nothing else to say except thank you all for coming out. Thank you, Reverend Neely and your congregation, for co-hosting this event. There are a lot of questions that came up. Some of the questions will require us to actually research and do outreach and best direct those that are asking the questions to areas to get their answers. Again, the initiative of CRC is one of the greatest engagement of civic responsibility and our communities in touch with all of their citizens. We've been around. I know Lou mentioned we've only been around a few years. Well, that's in our reinvigorated, reinvented civil rights process. We've actually been around as part of this community, and again, like I said, a great example of civic engagement for 50 years, since 1968. Civil Rights Act was passed in 1964. The citizens began clamoring and researching and studying what can they do. It was a collective of minds from every community in Princeton, all right, and ironically, politically enough, both sides of the aisle, all right. They reached out to the municipality, and they responded by developing what is now the Civil Rights Commission. So thank you. Let's keep this up. Put us out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Good night, all.